Module 4, putting it all together. So just to summarise where we've got to so far in our modules, we've had to think about preferred ways of learning, and we've considered whether you are a visual or verbal learner. Do you find it better to talk things through, to say them out loud, or do you find it easier to draw pictures and mind maps? So having a think about what works for you. And consider, as well as mind maps, some people find record cards really useful to write things down, post-its, coloured highlighter pens, and as I said, speaking aloud. And sometimes what can help us learn is to make stories out of information. So particularly funny stories, particularly memorable stories can really help us. So if you imagine having to remember history with lots of different facts and figures, making a funny story out of it can actually help you remember. Also, we're thinking about planning. So the use of a timetable or some kind of visual planner can really help you to feel that you're managing the revision and that you know what's coming up and you've organised slots for different topics. It's also really important to schedule breaks so you can properly enjoy the breaks and benefit from them. What sometimes we can get into is half studying, half having a break and not really enjoying the break and not really studying. So it can be helpful to have a clear line between when you're studying and when you're not studying. And as I said earlier, managing anxiety and stress is really important because what we know is it's really, really hard to learn and hard to remember if we're feeling really anxious because our attention is on something else and not on the information we need to be learning. So trying techniques such as mindfulness, following well-being advice around rest and good self-care are also really important. So what is self-care? Well, self-care is about looking after yourself and really getting the basics right. If you're not having much sleep, if you're going to bed way too late, getting up way too early, you're going to find it really hard to learn. So really try and make sure you're getting enough sleep. Also, eating regular meals is really important and trying to eat a healthy meal and something that's nutritious. We can get stuck into eating sweet things and carbohydrates that give us a burst of energy, but then we can feel a bit later on really tired and sluggish. So thinking about the kinds of things we're eating as well as making sure we're eating regularly. It's also important for us to look after our physical health. That's really important in terms of how it affects our mood, and our mood really affects our motivation. So we need to pay attention to physical health as well. And that might be in the middle of a revision day, just making sure we go out for a walk, even a quick bike ride. It doesn't have to be for a long time, but just a little bit of fresh air and getting active can help. So making sure we keep that active part of our lives going can be really helpful when we've got lots to learn and we're feeling quite tired from revision. And being kind to yourself, this is really key. It again is easy to get into negative patterns of thinking, to feel that we're not doing well enough, we could have revised more, and being quite hard on ourselves and critical. That doesn't really help us, it doesn't really motivate us and can make us feel low in mood and anxious. So recognise the things you're achieving, tick off things when you've done them, start to see what you're achieving during the day and be kind to yourself. And also make sure you're finding time to do things you enjoy. You may not be able to spend so much time with friends and doing the hobbies that you like, but even if you can spend a little bit of time regularly doing those things, again, it will give you balance in life and help to motivate you. Another point that's important to remember is connecting and communicating with other people. So when we are involved in revision, we can become quite isolated. And when we're isolated, we can get more stressed, we might get more anxious, we might even feel a bit low. Isolation for a long time really isn't good for us. So think about ways to reaching out to people we trust, to talk about how you're feeling and how things are. It's important, even if it's texting a friend, having a short conversation on the phone, You may not have time to spend lots of time with them, but just reaching out and checking in with each other can help us to feel better. And also, when you are having breaks that you've planned, think about having some good quality time with other people. Think about how you can still connect with people when you're busy revising. And before we reach the end of the module, have a think about the things that you'll take forward and put into practice after hearing modules 1 to 4. Make a note of those things that you want to try. Maybe use your planner or a notebook to write down some notes. Think about which strategies you're going to find useful and what you're going to do differently moving on from now. And finally, think about the benefits of getting organised. So if we plan and organise our revision and study, it can help us to feel a bit more in control of what can be an uncertain time. Be aware of avoidance and procrastination when we start to put things off and avoid doing them. It doesn't help in the long run. It may give us short-term relief, but in the end, it kind of builds up the anxiety and the worry. Make sure you organise those breaks to make sure you're looking after yourself and looking after your well-being. And remember to use a positive self-talk. So that's to challenge those negative thoughts that can creep in around the time of revision and exams. Being able to encourage yourself and tell yourself that you can do it, you can get through it, and you're working hard, and you do know this stuff, you are learning it, can really help. So be aware if you start to get into a negative way of thinking. And think about using those strategies to calm bodies down when they feel stressed and anxious. And this is equally important when you're about to sit an exam. So belly breathing, mindfulness, grounding techniques can all help when you're in that exam situation and starting to get a bit anxious, which is natural in that situation. Think about using those strategies there to calm yourself in the moment. And finally, as we said, connecting to others is really important. So make sure you're still arranging time to do that. That can help to get your motivation going. And we all need enjoyment in our lives, even when we're in the middle of revising. And here is a link to a YouTube clip that really nicely summarises the things that we've been looking at over the whole 4 modules.